Planning an outdoor wedding seems very tempting right now, until you actually think about all the work that goes into it. Today, I'm gonna give you guys all the information you need to plan an outdoor wedding on your own without a wedding planner. Although, of course, I still think it's a good idea to book one. While the intro's playing, comment below and let me know why you're excited to have an outdoor wedding. When you're planning an outdoor wedding, the first thing you need to do, which is always the first thing you need to do no matter what type of wedding you're planning, is decide on your budget. I've mentioned in previous videos that outdoor weddings can be more expensive than indoor weddings, and that's because sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're building a venue from scratch. For example, it can feel as simple as just pitching a tent in your backyard. But one of the things you have to consider is, are you and your guests comfortable walking on grass? We'll get into more of the details on that later, but first decide on how much you're comfortable spending overall. Outlining your budget will allow you to see what things you can add to your wedding or what limits you have to work within. Just a note here that your guest count will have a huge impact on what your budget will look like. And that's because your guest count determines the size of tent you need, how many chairs and tables you need. It also contributes to the decor price, and of course, the big one is catering. Once you've figured out your budget, you can decide whether you want to get married on private property like your own backyard or an Airbnb, or if you want to get married at an outdoor wedding venue. There are pros and cons to both of these options that I will be pointing out throughout the video, so if you haven't decided yet, hopefully this will help. Once you have a good idea on how much you're comfortable spending on your wedding and where exactly you'll be having your wedding, then you can make decisions on all the other logistics. So if your wedding's going to be on private property, consider each of these things and determine what you can do to create a better experience. Right off the bat, you might be thinking about nixing your tent off your rental list because tents can be very expensive. But I personally don't recommend that, especially when you live in a place like Edmonton where weather is completely unpredictable. You don't just have to worry about rain, it can also be very uncomfortable for your guests if it's way too sunny out. And the last thing that you want to do is be rushing at the very last minute to find a tent to rent out because chances are 30 other couples are doing the same thing. At that point, it's a lot of added stress and you might end up paying a lot more than what you would have if you rented one out in advance. A very important thing to keep in mind when you're renting a tent is that you will have to call the city in advance to come out and make sure that there are no pipelines where you're going to pitch the tent. This is free to do, but they will need notice, which is another reason why you should book your tent in advance. Your rental company will not come and pitch the tent at your property without you submitting these approval forms first. The next thing I want to talk about is flooring. Installing flooring is something that you might want to consider just to make sure that you and your guests feel a lot more comfortable. It's not something that you need or something that will necessarily make or break your wedding, but providing flooring for your guests will create a more comfortable experience overall, especially for guests who will be wearing heels. Keep in mind that installing flooring does not just affect the ground that you're walking on, but it could also affect the leveling of tables and chairs. And if it rains, not having any type of flooring in place could mean that the ground will get muddy, or at the very least, it would increase the discomfort of walking on the grass. The next logistical factor is temperature control. So do you need any heating or cooling systems in place to keep your guests comfortable? You can also do something simple like a cute basket of blankets. Next is lighting. How much will it cost to get lighting fixtures installed in the tent? This is something that a lot of couples don't think about until you're left in the dark on the day of the wedding. You can do something really simple for lighting, or you can take it up a notch and install some chandeliers. Lighting automatically takes us into the issue of electricity. Do you have easy access to it? And whatever the source is it providing enough electricity to keep your event running? Because lighting is not the only thing that requires electricity. You also have to think about your DJ and caterer, and literally anything else that requires an outlet. One thing you definitely don't want to forget about is bug control. You all know what I'm talking about with this one. No one wants to be eaten alive by mosquitoes all night. For this, there are companies that you can call to come out and spray the property in advance so that you don't have to worry about keeping bottles of bug repellent all around the tent. Next, you'll have to assess your restroom situation. If you're going to be on a private property, is it okay for the guests to be going in and out of the house? If so, is it easily accessible and are there enough bathrooms? The rule of thumb here is that there should be at least one bathroom for every 30 guests. So if that's going to be an issue, there are companies who rent out porta potties. And I'm not talking about the disgusting ones that we see at construction sites or public parks. There are some beautiful luxury porta potties specifically made for weddings. I'll attach a link in the description for a company who rents them out right here in Edmonton. Again, you don't need these things at your wedding. You can very much still have your wedding without them. But the thing is, if you have room in your budget, it doesn't hurt to look into them because it will affect the overall experience that you and your guests have. Ultimately, the more comfortable everyone is, the more likely they'll have a great time, which means they'll stick around for a lot longer. Okay, we're almost done, but there are still a few things that you need to look into, like tables and chairs. Most outdoor wedding venues will provide this for you, but if it's on private property or the venue doesn't provide it, this will be an additional cost. There is a wide range here of what you can spend, but if you want nice ones, it's going to be pricey. And again, with that, it just depends on how many guests you'll have. Another thing you have to consider is cleanup. If your venue is at a private property, you either have to get your family and friends to help out with that or hire a cleanup crew to do it for you. Finally, the last thing that you need to take care of is catering. Of course, if you're on private property, you will have to look for a catering company who can do off-site catering. And also, most outdoor venues don't actually have in-house catering, so you'll likely have to find an outside caterer either way, which I personally think is a great thing because you have that flexibility to do whatever you want in terms of the menu and serving style. But you will have to make sure that they have a place to prep the food and heat and cool the food if needed. Whether they're bringing their own equipment in or if you have to rent that out on your own, or if they just need electricity. The best thing that you can do is talk to your caterer and all of your other vendors and ask them what they need from you in order to do their job. That way, you're not in a situation where you assume that they would have told you or they assume that you would already know. And that'll help you avoid running around at the last minute to try to make things work. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, but there is a solution. Most of the headache here applies if you're going to have your wedding on private property. But if you choose to have your wedding at an outdoor wedding venue, it will save you a lot of hassle because they'll take care of most of those things for you. For example, they may already have a tent, tables, chairs, heating and cooling systems, bug control, a cleanup crew, and everything else we talked about. But if you're going to look into a place to rent, be aware of venues, including Airbnbs, who have nothing else to offer except for an outdoor space. Because at that point, you'll be stuck in a similar situation of doing your event at a private property, except that you'll have the added cost of the venue or Airbnb rental. So basically, it can end up being a lot more expensive. However, there are venues that provide you with everything you need to have a beautiful outdoor wedding without the added stress. And while they might have a scary price tag when you first look at it, it could end up costing you a lot less than the other options we talked about in this video, because all of those little things really add up. And I know what you're thinking, but yes, we do have options like that right here in Edmonton and Alberta. So if you want me to make a video about those venues, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening to this video all the way till the end. I know it was a long one, but if you liked it or found it helpful, please tap the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, please feel free to share the video with somebody who you think would benefit from it. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next week with another video on micro wedding ideas that will blow your guests away.
I just wanna love you, just wanna hold you, just wanna be with you till we grow old.